With a contract status update and more, this is Wrestling Rambles. My name is John, and you're watching the Wrestling Report. Before we move on, make sure you subscribe to Wrestling Rambles with notifications on, and don't forget to like the video. Mentioning WWE's thoughts on the feud between Carmelo Hayes and Andrade on SmackDown, Ringside News noted that Sean Ross Sapp reported on Fightful Select that Andrade and Carmelo Hayes have received high marks for their storytelling in the ring and getting the audience invested in their feud. It was also noted that this was pretty much expected, seeing how they've both lit up the screen. Taking to X, Dustin Rhodes uploaded a picture of himself, Shibata, the Von Erichs, and Sammy Guevara making their way to the ring at All In, as he wrote, "Gonna be real for a moment. If you asked me when I left the Fed if I was done, I would have told you yes. AEW called and my passion was renewed. I have had 5 wonderful, passionate years in AEW. I am grateful that I can still perform at a very high level, and that impresses me personally. I watched Sting my whole life, and he paved the way for all of us. To watch him for so long, still able, is inspirational. Whether you love me or hate me, I believe in all my years that I am doing my best work. Time to elevate the Von Erichs, Marshall Von Erich and Ross Von Erich, and pass on my knowledge to them and Sammy Guevara. I couldn't be prouder or happier with this faction of guys. I may have been done 5 years ago, but passion came calling. Thank you, Tony Khan, for all the opportunities. Here's to another 36. During the big tag team match at AEW All In, Sammy Guevara and Brian Cage would both wear Wolverine-inspired gear for their bout. Brian Cage addressed this in a clip on X.
All right, for those pretending not to know, let me put you on point. Let me put you on game, all right? Now I've always been this Wolverine. I mean, what's the back of my ass say? I'm my King Tights Wolverine. But I've had countless Wolverine tights. All my monikers, my move names, Drill Claw, Weapon X, Tornado Claw. Plus, I mean, here, check
Custom J's with the B and the C on the tongue.
Move out of the way, Lace. Got the slash marks, the freaking wing tips. Yeah, I ain't ripping off nobody. I be getting ripped off. I mean, of course, who better? Who better? You know, Sammy Guevara, he's the Wish Wolverine. I'm the real Wolverine. I'm post Weapon X program. Sammy Guevara's 1800s James Howlett.
Giving advice to AEW President Tony Khan and telling him to let writers for the promotion Jen Pepperman take over the creative process, former WCW President Eric Bischoff noted on his 83 Weeks podcast. If I were Tony, I would sit down with Jen Pepperman today before the sun goes down and say, Jen, I want you to build the new AEW creative system. Not just work on storylines or come up with hot angles. Build me a system. Oversee the development of that system. You get to hire. We'll start off with 2 people that you feel you could really have fun collaborating with and come up with great stuff. And if I were Tony, I would give Jen complete creative control over the entire process. Tony needs to stay out of it. Tony needs to focus on the things that Tony's good at. Tony needs to focus on building out the business side of the wrestling business. Clearly, his family has had some success in that area. Focus on the things you do well, Tony. Run in the other direction from things that you are not good at, that you don't have experience in, or that you don't have an instinct for. It's okay. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you any less than Vince McMahon or Paul Heyman or anybody else you want to compare yourself to. By recognizing your strengths and leveraging those strengths in a way that benefits your goals and your business. More importantly, recognize, I don't want to call it a weakness, just because you're not good at creative doesn't mean it's a weakness. You can be good at 1,000 other things that matter way more. It's not a weakness, it just is what it is. Acknowledge that, acknowledge your strength, and put the right people in charge. Jen Pepperman is so loyal. If you're ever worried, Tony, about giving the keys to someone who might not have your best interests at heart or who doesn't want to make you look good. Know this, Jen and people like her, once you bring them in and develop that relationship, their job will be to make you look better. Hiring them will make you look better. It will make the talent look better because now they're involved in stories that are compelling, and dare I say, at the end of all that, with everyone feeling better and looking better, you'll probably be growing your audience. It's right there, Tony, in the palm of your hands. The evidence of your ability, your knack for creative, the evidence is there. You don't have that, but you've got so many other things. So why focus on the thing that you're not good at? Is it your ego? More than likely, I've got one too. Sometimes it's really freaking healthy, sometimes it's not. It's human nature, we're all the same. Nobody's perfect. But don't let your ego get in the way. You've got the assets right now. Jen Pepperman is your solution. She is your solution. And I'm going to take it a step further. If there's any concern on the part of Warner Brothers Discovery about AEW's ability to grow an audience, what better way to make a big move than to give creative 100% control of that process? Yes, you have to hold her accountable. You have to hold her team accountable. There has to be a plan in place, a way to measure success beyond your emotional reaction of what you see and whether you like it or don't like it from your perspective as a wrestling fan. That's not how you operate a business or produce a television show, by the way. So hold her accountable, but give it to her. She's right there. Responding to the idea that everyone in AEW hates each other, AEW Women's Champion Mariah May said this to the Daily Star. I see a lot of stuff that is desperately untrue, and it's just disappointing to read, but I don't normally think about it because I just think it will never end. All people do is talk and speculate. But the one thing I feel like I should say is that everyone in that locker room gets on very well. I don't know why it is rumored that we all don't like each other. They all get along super well. It's me that gets along with nobody and stabs people in the head with shoes. Everybody else is great. Talking about her feud with Alexa Bliss from her time in WWE, Ronda Rousey told Ring the Bell, well, at the time I was like, oh, well, maybe they're just trying to make me a better wrestler and be able to sell for someone who's as big as my leg and make it convincing. But really, it just came down to the fact that Vince didn't pay any attention to us and just looked at, oh, she sells the most merch, Ronda's hot right now, put them together. That was as much thought as he put into it. That started a long legacy of having to make chicken into chicken salad, but I learned a lot from her. She taught me okay, we're going to have to lead on comedy and story and expression and stuff like that to be able to get people into this. Recalling her time on NXT and her winning the NXT Women's Championship, AEW star Mercedes Mone said this to The Independent. I knew we were on the right track in 2015 when the four of us faced off at NXT TakeOver Rival. My flight was delayed and I was so worried I wouldn't make it. I remember calling my coach in tears and telling him I might miss the show. Luckily, I got there just before it started and ended up winning my first NXT Women's Championship. While winning the belt felt amazing, what really made the night magical was seeing the reaction to our match. Fans blew the roof off the place with chants of "This is awesome," and the internet exploded with positive reviews. I knew then that we were doing something really special. She also said this about her time in WWE. In WWE, you have no idea what you'll be doing week to week, she shared. However, her experience in AEW has been different. Monet praised the collaborative environment, mentioning how she and her personal writer, Jennifer Pepperman, work closely with Tony Khan to plan meaningful stories. I'm treated with genuine respect, and I really feel seen in a way I sometimes haven't before, Monet said. I love it so much here. recapping the controversy that surrounded Tessa Blanchard and her reaction to those allegations. Ringside News wrote that Tessa Blanchard was the first ever women's world champion in Impact Wrestling after she beat Sammy to kick off 2020. Controversy exploded surrounding Blanchard around that time, and it had a domino effect. In fact, Blanchard admitted that she wanted to end it all after she was hit with racism allegations. Tessa Blanchard was previously deemed to be nuclear following several stories of backstage abuse. She began working in WOW Women of Wrestling, but even there she had a huge fallout. During a trip in Japan, Tessa Blanchard called pro wrestler La Rosa Negra a racial slur before spitting on her. This was something that Negra later said she didn't ask for an apology for, as Blanchard herself denied the allegation. During her appearance on Straight Talk Wrestling, Tessa Blanchard opened up about that challenging period in her career. Despite everything she went through, she wouldn't change a thing, as it shaped who she is today. Blanchard reflected on the days when she struggled to find the strength to face the day, especially after being hit with serious accusations that drastically changed her life in just 24 hours. Blanchard shared that at one point she had significant contract offers from major wrestling companies, but after the accusations, those offers vanished. She even begged Impact Wrestling not to put the world title on her at Hard to Kill. Blanchard emphasized that she knew she wasn't the person she was being accused of, and she feels the public still doesn't know the full truth about what happened. Regarding her in-ring future, Blanchard mentioned that she's been in contact with various companies, but nothing has felt right for her to return just yet. She's focused on her happiness and mental health, especially after developing anxiety from everything she went through. Blanchard spoke about the intense anxiety she now faces, sometimes feeling uncomfortable in her own skin, but she's learning to cope through breathing exercises and self-reflection. Honestly, I wouldn't change anything about the peaks, the valleys, the way my career's been. I wouldn't change anything because I'm very proud of the woman that I am now and the wrestler that I am today and where my career is, because if anything would have been different, I might be in a different place. I might be a different person. My ego might be through the roof. Who knows? So when everything happened to me, it was even like a tough topic to even talk about. I remember I was living in Tijuana at the time, and I remember some days I would wake up, I didn't even have the strength to live that day. So I would just go back to bed and I would be in my bed all day long. There were days where I was tired about life just because my identity was wrestling. I didn't know who I was without wrestling, and in a matter of less than 24 hours, it was from here to boom. From contract offers from the biggest companies, more money than I'd ever seen in my life, to nothing. This whole storyline we had built for 8 or 9 months, to me begging the TNA office that day, I don't want to win it, I don't want to do this, and after, I didn't go home. I went on a 27-day media tour in Mexico, where I remember we would pull over in the Uber before every interview and I would vomit. I was just puking and puking because it was whiplash. I didn't know, and I was seeing and hearing, and my family, my little brother and sister were 14 years old at the time, were reading all these things about me that I knew wasn't me, I knew wasn't in my heart. I wasn't this person, but it didn't matter. Perception's reality, right? The truth doesn't matter, and even the real truth isn't even out there still, and it doesn't matter. But sometimes those things happen because when your feet are pretty far off the ground, when you fall hard. And I didn't know my identity without wrestling, and through all of that, through those ups and downs, those really hard days that I didn't know if I was going to get through, I found out who Tessa is without wrestling. I went back to college. I joined ROTC, Army ROTC, and I found out, hey, I'm good at other things too. Yeah, wrestling is my dream and I love it, and this is what God's put in my life, but without wrestling, I'm gonna be okay also. There is a life after this, and one day if I get hurt or one day this isn't my life, I'm still gonna be alright because Tessa's pretty chingon without wrestling. But I've talked to some other companies, and in the time and pretty recently, it just hasn't felt right yet to go, and one thing that I promised myself is that it doesn't matter about the money, it doesn't matter anything. If it doesn't feel right, then I'm not gonna do it. Because my happiness right now is very important to me, and why I say that is because through all of the things that I went through, I developed some anxiety. Blanchard also recalled moments when she was overwhelmed with despair, even imagining ways to end it all. She credits her ex-husband and self-counseling for helping her through those dark times. Ultimately, Blanchard is working on discovering who she is outside of wrestling and learning to be comfortable in her own skin, setting boundaries and figuring out what truly makes her happy. It sounds so silly, I feel like, to talk about, but unless you've actually gone through or experienced those high levels of anxiety, it's hard to really explain. But there will be some days where I'm uncomfortable in my own skin, even because it just overtakes everything, and I never had that before. All my ups and downs in wrestling, more so the downs, and now it's something that I deal with quite frequently. Even just the other day, I remember just us being in a bus. There's a lot of people around me, and I felt this strong anxiety, and now I'm learning different ways to cope with it. Just breathing exercises in ways like, hey Tessa, everything's okay. Recenter, refocus, everything's alright, and I feel silly talking about it, but it's something that's really real that people struggle with, anxiety. I remember when I was going through some of my things, I remember one day in my dad's house, I was visiting family, and I was just doing laundry. I remember I was moving the clothes from the washer to the dryer, and I just fell to the ground, bawling my eyes out. I was like, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to live this life. I don't want to live this life. I don't want to do this anymore. I remember even imagining ways to just end it all, and my ex-husband helped me a lot through some of those moments, but it took a lot of self-counseling too, talking to other people and just trying to get comfortable and figuring out who Tessa is outside of the wrestling world, outside of the spotlight. When it's all said and done, we came into this world alone. We're going to leave this world alone. Who am I? What do I like? What do I not like? Where are my boundaries? Where am I gonna say no? What am I okay with? All of these things, and figuring out how to cope with that anxiety, being comfortable in your own skin, it takes a lot of work, yeah? As Bryan Danielson ended up winning the AEW World title from Swerve Strickland at All In, he did that while not being under contract with the company. Now, Ringside News has said that Bryan Danielson is nearing the end of his wrestling career and facing significant physical challenges. Recently, on AEW programming, Danielson mentioned that AEW doctors advised him not to wrestle until All In, a statement that was more accurate than many initially thought. Sean Ross Sapp noted on Fightful Select that Bryan Danielson's path to AEW All In had been planned since the spring. While he was cleared to wrestle at All In and against Jeff Jarrett, he was not medically cleared to participate in AEW Blood and Guts. This led AEW to realize that Danielson's matches might be fewer than expected, resulting in him wrestling only once in the month and a half between the Owen Hart Foundation tournament and All In. Despite working without a contract for 3 weeks, Bryan Danielson has continued his responsibilities, including contributing creatively and serving on the disciplinary committee. AEW sources anticipate renewed efforts for a working agreement whenever his current run concludes. Those within AEW have reportedly praised the trust Tony Khan has in Danielson and his transparency. Recounting a time that the late Bray Wyatt helped him out, former WWE star Enzo Amore wrote this on Instagram. The first time I ever hit the road in the WWE, Wyndham asked me if I wanted to ride with him. Of course I wanted to. Wyndham was hilarious. We drove across the state of Texas, and sure enough, we got pulled over. When the cop looked in the car, he had no idea who we were, but lucky for us, he did know who Bray Wyatt was. He said, "Sir, I'm a huge fan. Do you mind if we take a photo?" Wyndham put me under his wing. From FCW to my first road loop in WWE, I can never thank him enough. A father, a son, brother, a husband, a good man, and my friend. I always thought I'd see him again. Can't believe it's been a year. You've been gone, Hoot. Miss you, Briz. Thanks for getting us out of that ticket. See you down the road. Going over the contract status of Kevin Owens with WWE, Ringside News wrote that back in December 2021, after a lot of speculation about whether Kevin Owens would stay with WWE or not, it was revealed that Owens signed another contract with WWE, which was said to be a multi-year deal. In May this year, Kevin Owens mentioned to Alistair McGeorge of Metro that he had 9 months remaining on his WWE contract, noting that he doesn't take anything for granted. This made fans curious about what Kevin Kevin Owens would ultimately do. I really don't take anything for granted. I have 9 months left on my contract, and I don't know what can happen from here on out. In a recent conversation with Sports Illustrated, Kevin Owens confirmed that there have been no changes to his contract status. He simply has less time left on it. Therefore, he has yet to sign a contract extension with WWE. During an interview with Metro UK back in May, Owens revealed that his current deal is set to expire in the early part of next year. He tells the Takedown on SI that the only change in his contract status since then is that there's now less time on his deal. In some unfortunate news, Psycho Sid Vicious has passed away, with his son writing on Facebook, "Dear friends and family, I am deeply saddened to share that my father, Sid Udy, has passed away after battling cancer for several years. He was a man of strength, kindness, and love, and his presence will be greatly missed. We appreciate your thoughts and prayers as we grieve this loss. Details for a memorial service will be shared soon. Thank you for your support." And this was your pro wrestling news update. I hope you're all having a great day. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see y'all later.